Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. As you guys can see, bubble and polish still up on the dyno. Just got to the shop this morning. First off, I want to say thank you to you guys. Last night, I uploaded the video on this car at like midnight. Went ahead on and talked about the membership options and the super thanks. Woke up this morning to an email full of questions about remote tuning, guys that have already joined the membership, guys that have sent me super thanks. So to you guys that have joined the membership, I'm going to make a video for you guys like today. So if you see this video before the other one, just know that I've got a video coming for you guys. Got to the shop a little bit late this morning. Mike Galley went ahead on and put some spark plug wires on the bubble Impala. So we're about to fire this thing up, warm it up, and do some rips and see if we've cured the misfire issue. All right guys, so in the bubble, so let's go ahead on and cold start this thing and see how it feels. Door so y'all can hear me a little bit better. Now again, the tune is exactly where we left off yesterday. When I was looking through the log, this mass airflow sensor, I don't think I'm gonna be able to run it. I think I'm gonna have to go just straight speed density on this thing because like just looking through all the logs, it's just too turbulent really. But for now, obviously I wanted to cold start it and I didn't want to change anything. So we'll let this thing warm up. I'll get the fans on, the dyno still in vehicle simulation, everything's still set up just like yesterday. So once the car warms up, we'll go in and start to lean into it a little bit and hope this misfire has been resolved. We're basically at 160 degrees now, so let's go ahead on and load this thing in and see how it feels. Misfire's still there. Let me switch it over into speed density and just make sure that this MAF, so what I'm watching right now, let me shut the car off. What I'm watching right now is this MAF frequency right here. Let me make this to where you guys can see a little bit better. All right, so I'm watching this MAF frequency right here. If you'll watch as I play this, and this is in real time, you see how jagged this is? The ECU and this laptop, it's, you know, the ECU sending out the data, it's having to be translated by HPtuners and come into my laptop. So the MAF frequency may even be even worse than this. I'm gonna go ahead on and transfer it over to speed density and see if we can smooth it out. And if it does, one thing I want you guys to understand, like I put in yesterday's video, is yes, we put spark plug wires on here and yes, it didn't fix the problem. But as you guys saw in the intro to yesterday's video, plug wires were already old and they were mismatched. There's nothing wrong with doing a maintenance item. I believe this car was built in like 2015. So there's nothing wrong with doing a maintenance item. So I hate the fact that the plug wires did not resolve it, but to me, it's just a maintenance item. I think most of you guys are gonna understand, but just in case some of you don't. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch it over to speed density and we'll see if that helped. If it does, cool. If not, the next thing we would need to do is, I mean, this camshaft is so rowdy, we could have a broken valve spring or something causing it. But it also could be a coil. That's what I'm gonna do. Let's go to speed density. So I guess today's video is gonna be on speed density tuning, a Gen 4 ECU. Wasn't sure what the video was gonna be about when we started it, but this is where we're at. So this is just the nature of tuning. We just gotta kind of go and make changes and work with what we have. To get a Gen 4 ECU over to speed density, first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go engine, airflow, dynamic. And we're just gonna make this higher than what you can attain. So I'm just gonna make it 8,000 and 7,950. All right, so that takes care of that part. Next thing, this is a very common issue that guys have. So if you've done a speed density tune and the vehicle starts like shit on cold start, but it does better once you get it warmed up. I've showed you in a video, but I'll show you guys here. So you're gonna go to idle, you're gonna go to airflow, and then right here, max fail, we're gonna make this 8192, and we're gonna make this min fail 0. So what this is, if you read the description, it says maximum desired effective area in square millimeters when MAP, TPS, or MAF fault is indicated. A lot of guys will miss this step, and they will actually avoid doing speed density tuning because they cold start like shit. This is the problem. The next thing we need to do is we need to go under engine diag, we need to go to airflow, and then this MAF frequency feel high, let's just make it 10. Gen 4 ECUs don't like being zeroed for whatever reason. Let's make this MAF frequency feel low 1. And now we need to go under DTCs, and we need to go down to PO101, PO102, and PO103. Okay, they are all on MIL on first air, so I'm gonna uncheck the SES enable box. The next thing I wanna do is I'm gonna go over to edit, virtual volumetric efficiency, and I'm gonna go to manifold switch open, and we're gonna look at the V table. So This is their VE table. It shouldn't look like this. The only time I've ever had one look like this is if it had ITBs on it. We're gonna roll with it though. We're gonna assume they tuned this. We're just gonna roll with it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy this table. And the reason why I'm gonna copy it is because I wanna go in and change the zone map boundaries, which we talked about the other day. And then I'm going to close that out. And we're gonna go under airflow, dynamic, zone RPM boundaries. I'm gonna type in 1750 here because this is the numbers that I like. I'm gonna type in 5500 here, and I'm gonna interpolate horizontally. And zone map boundaries, I'm gonna put 30 over here, so where these columns match, and then we're gonna interpolate horizontally. And so what that's gonna do is it's gonna jack up our VE table because now the coefficients are different. So now this is what our VE table looks like right now, okay? Here, let me make this where y'all can see it better. So this is what our VE table looks like right now, but that's why we copied the VE table at first. So I'm gonna go back, actually we'll go to open. So it still looks the same under manifold open. So what I'm gonna do is now I'm gonna paste in our VE table, click calculate coefficients, and now we have a normal looking VE table again. Again, this table is probably not correct, but this is what was already in the car, so we're just gonna roll with it. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna copy it, and I'm gonna go ahead and paste it in all the others, just because again, I like to be uniform. And then we're gonna start up the car and start watching EQ Air. Again, normally VE stuff, I would actually do VE calculations in the background based off of dynamic airflow. But for the purpose of this video, we're gonna tune it the old school way. So I'm gonna save this as, and we'll just call this SD1, and load this thing in. All right, speed density file is loaded in. So let's go ahead on and take a data log and see where we're at. So obviously, I'm assuming this VE table is gonna be pretty far off. So far, it's actually looking okay. Car's kind of struggling with idle, but not too concerned about that. Probably need to put a little bit more idle timing in that, and I also need to simmer down the over-under spark. Car's still warm, fans are still on, so let's put the car, well, she stalled. Let's put the car in gear and see if it's misfiring. Look at the MAF frequency. MAF frequency is going crazy, but fueling is a lot tighter now. So if you look at EQ Air, before we were all over the place. Now we're actually much better. Misfire is still there though. Car's going straight up lean, as you guys can see. So what we can do is, it is possible, actually no, it's more than likely that that's actually just an error in the VE table. So let me put some fuel in the VE table right there. Just like what we do with EQ Air versus MAF, I also have an EQ Air versus VE table. So we can see that in the area where I expected it to be lean, it actually is. So let's just go ahead on and throw in, I'll just throw in a shitload of fuel. Let's do like 25% fuel right here. And I'll try to reshape the VE table with something that seems more reasonable, and then we'll try again. So I've done some speed density changes, made some big changes in the VE table, so I'll show you guys. This is what it looks like currently. A ton more fuel in it right here. So right now, I mean, this isn't like smooth or, you know, this is just using the data that I have available. So hopefully this will help out some. So let's go and get this thing fired up. Now, I want you guys to understand that if this solves the problem and it solves the misfire, this intake design, there's really no reason for this MAF to be as turbulent as it is. So it could, I mean, it could be because this motor is so damn rowdy, but we still could have valve geometry issues. We could have other issues causing the MAF to be as turbulent as what it is. Traditionally, they can kind of be turbulent down low, but then once you get rolling, they're not as turbulent. So we'll just see. Once I get this fuel squared away on the VE table, if everything's looking good, then we'll just go from there. So let's start with first gear. First gear is feeling okay. Let's load a little bit more. Let's go second gear. Second gear is feeling okay at the moment. Third gear. Third gear is feeling okay. So that should be, I mean, that's a good sign right there. So it very well could have been the MAF turbulence. And again, for those that don't understand, this data that we're getting right here is limited basically at The ECU can only give us so much data out of it. The HPtuners interface can only comprehend so much of it. And then of course, even my laptop itself can only handle so much data. So if this right here looks as radical as what it does to us, there's a good chance that it's way worse than the ECU. So let's go ahead and put this thing in a second gear. Now right now, I don't know if you guys noticed that, but bank 2, bank 1's actually looking pretty clean. Bank 2 is starting to show what looks like a misfire. As I put some load in there, it kind of goes away. So we'll see what that's about. So let's go ahead on and lock the thing in a second gear. Let's do a rip. Stopping the data log. Let me unlock the converter. I think there's still a little something going on there, but it could be timing related, it could be fuel related, but it's not near as bad as what it was. If you guys notice in the log, obviously at bank 2 in green, bank 1 is in pink, and you see where it's dropping out. So we could still have, especially right here, we could still have some issues. But if you notice now, yesterday the issues was showing up on both banks, and now it looks like we've got it narrowed down to maybe one bank with an issue. So we will, all right, let's look at this data log real quick. So I'm gonna show you guys kind of a simple little trick, I guess. This is not the way I do it, but when we're doing VE tuning, if you just wanna rough the thing in, if you've got a decent shape on your V curve, you can actually just make a whole column, because, so a lot of guys don't understand this. Basically the shape of your wide open throttle curve, the V curve, is gonna be the same shape at high vacuum, just a lot lower. So we can kind of make general blanket changes and then dial it in further as we go. So 3,800 RPM, you'll see commanded is 83 lambda, actual is 83 lambda. So let's move over to 4,000 RPM. Now again, I'll probably have some better data when I go into third gear. I'll probably end up tuning, we'll probably use third gear because the mile an hour seems actually to be okay on this thing. So 4,000 RPM, we're 1% rich. So we can go to our table. We can actually go right here and we can just subtract 1%. Let's go to 4250. Right here we're 3%, so we can just take away 3%. And basically we'll just do this across the curve. So again, I'm showing you guys for you. This is not how I normally tune it. Normally I'll actually calculate it up in the background, and I kind of have my own ways of doing it, but I want to show you guys kind of a simpler way of doing it. But again, this just goes to show that sometimes you just got to take data. I mean, again, 17 years of diagnostics. I knew the map was super turbulent, but I wouldn't have thought it was going to cause that bad of a misfire. So again, I wanted to go ahead and take care of the maintenance items first. So maintenance items are taken care of. Plugs look great. Wires, obviously they're new now. So then obviously now we got to go start doing our own diag on the car. So when the map was that turbulent, it's like, let's go ahead on and try to move over to speed density. So anyways, 4750, you see we're 3% off here. Now, obviously there is going to be some transport delay in the amount of time it takes from the combustion cycle to happen for it to come out the primaries and for it to the O2 sensors, then for it to get to the wideband. So these changes, it may not be perfect. Like what we're seeing at 4750 may actually be at 4620. But as long as we just kind of rough it in the general area and get it dialed in, then we can just continue to work through this and get it dialed in more and more. So I'm going to go ahead on and finish sweeping through the VE table. It's all the same as what I'm just showing you. I'm just going to go ahead on and go up to where I pulled it, and then we'll test it again. The next thing I want to show you guys before I click calculate coefficients, because it's going to smooth it out some. If you notice how there's some peaks in this fueling, you know, a lot of guys are like, no, engines fuel smoothly. They really don't. So the fueling is dictated based off of runner length, cylinder head volume. Just there's a ton of different variables that are happening here. Even the length of the cold air pipe all changes when you're moving air mass. There's going to be certain times where the airflow is actually bouncing off the valve, going back and then coming back in, and it comes back in the right spot where you may almost get almost like a supercharging effect in that area. So there are going to be some specific RPMs that maybe the engine's just more efficient than others. So even if you look at factory VE tables sometimes, especially like in the trucks, like I can't remember, but it's like 1800 or 2000 RPM, you may see like a little ridge in the VE table. A lot of the times when we're tuning, we'll see that same ridge. So obviously I'm gonna click calculate coefficients and it's gonna smooth out some of this, but I just want you guys to understand that engines don't necessarily feel smoothly. When you see a dyno graph that's super smooth, usually it's just because they got the smoothing turned up. Engines are actually kind of rough. So just to make sure y'all are aware. But anyways, VE changes are being made. I'm gonna go ahead and copy them over into the other areas and we're gonna retest it again. So that speed density tuner is loaded in. So we're gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna dig down into first. And we're gonna sweep on through the curve. And as you guys can see up here, we're calculating EQ error. You can also see active EQ error right here. So we're a touch rich right now. Again, I'm not terribly concerned. As you can see, bank 2 is starting to act kind of funny again, but it only does it for a second, then it goes away. All right, let's go in and do another rip in second. So transmission, gear, command second gear. Going to lock it up. Looks like we're a little rich right here in this area. You can see EQ error right here. So again, this is just data that I'm taking right now. This is not steady state. This car being automatic with a loose converter. I don't want to necessarily steady state it, but I can make, some of this data is going to be valid and some of it's not. So let's go ahead and do a full throttle pull. We'll stop the log, unlock the converter. As you guys can see, we're low timing still. But everything's looking pretty solid right now. So I think that was the fix. Again, right here, ignore my red line. For whatever reason, my wideband VE, it could be a miscalculation. I've changed laptops, and so I may not have my user math correctly for my wideband VE option right here. But if you look, this orange line is going to be VE airflow, which is directly based off of dynamic airflow. So both of those are basically overlaying, but you can see how turbulent the MAF is still. And it's turbulent across the board. Traditionally, when it's a valve spring issue, usually the MAF will kind of be smooth at wide open throttle, then it'll get to more choppy right here. So again, I just think we got a MAF turbulent issue. I don't know why. Fans aren't pointing at it. It's got a pretty big, cotton gauze air filter. The MAF's kind of far away from the motor. I don't really understand it, but again, like we talked about in other videos, I'm always going to be a type of person where let's just give it what it wants and develop a theory later. Also note, 6,400 RPM. I mean, if you look at this map value right here, this engine is not breathing real efficient. We're down to 92 right here, so we're basically down 7-8% airflow. That's probably due to the 4-inch intake tube. I mean, this being a 454, it probably wants a 4.5 or even 5-inch intake to really maximize NA power. Also, it probably wants a 2-inch primary header with like 3.5-inch pipes back, but we're down to like 1 3/4 inch and 7/8 headers with 3-inch. So that's going to cost us a little bit of power as well. But so far, everything's looking good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the data that we just took, I'm going to input that into the VE table, and I'm going to go ahead and get the dyno set up and let's do some actual power pulls. I know you guys have been wondering how much power this bitch makes. We're going to see. So I'm going to tell you, I know a bunch of y'all have already left me comments. A lot of you guys are in like the 525, 540 range. I'm honestly, here, let me shut this thing off. I'm honestly thinking probably 480 to 490. And the reason why I say that is I think if some of you guys have watched like my 57 Chevy video or the video where I did the Denali, the Whipple on it, traditionally something that makes roughly 650 flywheel will only make like 480 or 490 on this dyno. Again, it's just the way the dyno spits it out. You get it out of the track, and if you use Wallace Racing Calculator and you use a mile an hour and you see where in the calculator it says rear wheel horsepower, this dyno reads lower than what that thing calculates. So I don't know why this dyno reads low, but it's just always like that. So, if you watch the data log with the car that went 7-second F-body, I think that car only made like maybe 1080 on this dyno, but it still went 793 at like 181 miles an hour. So, some of you guys that talk about dyno numbers, if you've got a 1,000 horsepower vehicle on the dyno with the Turbo 400 and a good chassis, if it's not trapping like 135 to 140 miles an hour in the 8th, that dyno is probably reading off compared to mine. So I just want you guys to understand that even though this dyno reads low, when we take the cars to the track, so another instance is I had a ZL1, a 2021 model ZL1. On this dyno, it made like, I think like 780, and he takes it to the track and it went like a 603 at like 118 miles an hour at a full weight ZL1. So just know that even though the dyno numbers are always low on here, is what it is, but that's my guess. I'm gonna say between 480, well, I'll say between 480 and 495. That'll be my range. So we'll see, maybe y'all are gonna beat me to it. Like, you know, some of you guys, you know, y'all may be dead on, we'll see. But also we can look at fuel flow, and we're at 77% injector duty cycle on the 50-pound injectors. So just like my Gen 3 V for Dummies video, we can actually back calculate and see how the fueling is there. I'm gonna dig through this, adjust the V table. I'm gonna set up the dyno and we're gonna do some rips. All right guys, oil has been changed. Everything looked good. The oil was a little bit fuely, but right now I'm just trying to get the oil up to temperature. Coolant temp's at 167 degrees. It cooled down to like 147, but this car seems to be like, you know, 170, 175 degrees. So I'm gonna let this thing run for just a couple more seconds. Dyno is set up. We're gonna start off with a 3,000 to 6,800 pull. I am gonna do second gear locked for right now. I may do third, but so far the dyno pulls seem to be like they're a reasonable amount of time. But I've looked at all your comments. A lot of you guys are in the 500 to, I think I even saw as high as like 585. So as I said earlier, I'm gonna say it's probably between 480 and 495. I hope I'm wrong though. I'd love for this thing to make more. Obviously the first rips are probably gonna be a little bit low. We're gonna see like 19 to 20 degrees at wide open throttle. This engine, when we pulled the plugs looked like the timing was a little bit soft. So I'll try to spice it up a little bit. All right, we'll go in and lock this thing into gear. Let's let it rip. Stop the data log. Go in and unlock the converter. I think that's a good, time-wise, I think that's good for the dyno pull. Here you can see the percentage that we were off on EQ error. Nothing crazy. Still some changes to be made though. Looking through the log, so we're showing up a touch of knock. I'm gonna assume that it's false. So this car is actually running some, I think the company's like BRP. It's running their swap motor mounts, and it actually uses the clamshell style, like the small block Chevy clamshell style with the urethane. And apparently the mount's hitting a little bit. So Mike had even told me that there's a good chance I'm gonna see some false knock. But everything else looks good, other than the fact that obviously we have an intake restriction. So let's get it out and see what kind of power it made. These windows are so dark I can't even see it right now. So let's hop out. First rip, not bad. 492.3 horsepower, 443.7 foot-pounds of torque. Again, this is a Mustang dyno, so that's 10% low. So that would put this thing right around 540-ish or so on a dyno jet. And we can show flywheel values, 639.4, 576.6. Just like I said earlier, 650 flywheel will usually make right around 490. So we're right about that spot. And let's pull up the trace. So you can see, she kind of lays over a little bit. Looks like it makes peak power like 6,100, but it holds pretty good. And that's gonna be the nature of that intake being too small. And also really it could be the exhaust being a little bit small too for the cubic inch. Here, I'll move this over to 6,800. Yeah, so there's the whole curve. So let's go back in the car and we'll put some timing in this thing and double check the data log and we'll make another rip. So as you guys can see, light on timing. Air fuel was decent. Again, I can clean that up a little bit more. I made some pretty drastic VE changes from the steady state data that I had. So we can clean that up some more. But yeah, everything looks good. So I'm gonna make my changes. Again, I'm not gonna do anything else differently than what I've already showed you guys. I'm gonna make some changes in the VE table, and I'll probably put another degree or two in it, but I don't anticipate on this thing making much more. So again, you guys that guess a little bit high, you would probably be correct if this thing had a 4.5 or 5 inch intake on it. You would also be correct if it had a set of 2 inch headers on it with like some 3.5 inch exhaust. But I mean, this thing is right on the money of what it should be making. So if he did headers, 3.5, like 2 inch headers, 3.5 inch exhaust, 4.5 or 5 inch intake, the thing would probably pick up another, so probably 7 or 8% power. And then obviously it would dyno better if it didn't have the 9 inch, if it didn't have the 24s on it, and if I dynoed it in third. This car has a 275, 25, 24, and obviously these are Forgiatos. So I don't want to run these tires up. They're like just a Chinese tire. I don't want to run them up to 140 or 150 miles an hour. If the owner wants to, he's more than welcome to, but it's not worth it to me to try to pick up another, you know, 10 or 15 horsepower on the dyno just by being in third gear. It's just not worth it to me. So anyways, I'm gonna make my changes and we'll do another rip. Dyno's ready to go. We're gonna go for pull number 2. This is 2 degrees more. I also tried to clean up fueling a little bit more. I haven't touched knock sensors or anything like that. I'm just gonna kind of see what they do. So again, if you guys are seeing my EQ error right now, this is stuff that I'll address on, I'll probably steady state this car when it's not hot, and I'll also probably take it out on the street and double check everything. So it is completely normal in the current tuning state to see this, but again, I wanted to get the wide open throttle fuel curve like dictated first before I work my way down. So let's do a rip. Knock sensors come in just a touch more that time, just on the hit, which makes me believe that it's still false. Car is also not showing the added timing that I put in there, so the fuel change may have brought me into another spot on cylinder air mass. So I need to double check that. So I'll just roll that on the window and see what power it made. Made 497.4. 447 torque, so it did pick up power with the fuel change, but again, it didn't show the added timing in that right there. So I'm going to go ahead on and make that change, and we'll do another rip. Copied over the high octane table to the low octane table to make sure that wasn't causing me any issues. So I want this thing to have the timing in it, at least so we can get it dialed in, and then I can make the adjustments on the street or just later on. This is only just the initial part of the tuning process. Converter's locked. Let's let her rip. All right, fueling come in, everything looked good, but this thing's got roughly a degree and a half, 2 degrees more. So let's get out and see if it picked up any power. All right, so we got 500.8, 454 foot-pounds of torque. So it liked the timing down low. It did not really care as much up top. There you have it. So we can actually compare it to the pull before. All right, so there it was, the pull before. So you can see it really liked it down low. The lighter of the color is where we're at now, but it really liked it down low. It just didn't care as much up top. And this is gonna be similar to what I see on LS7s. Like LS7s just seem to not really give a shit about timing as much up top. So right here at peak horsepower, we'll probably pull the timing back out. It was actually starting to separate, and it seemed like it liked the timing a little bit more up top. So I'm just gonna shape it this way. There we have it. I'm gonna look at the data one more time. I may reshape this, and we may do one other pull. Also, just to show you guys, the 500.8, the 454.5, first off, torque number is pretty cool. But just like I told you guys, that this thing should make right around 650 flywheel. If we click engine values, you'll see 649.3, 591.2 foot-pounds of torque. So that'll give you guys a much better idea as what this thing makes at the crankshaft. And again, I think this thing would make 700, 720 crankshaft with the correct intake and exhaust. But anyways, I just thought that was neat, so I wanted to show you guys. All right, so looking at this data, at 25 degrees on tip in, obviously it pulls back to 19 and a half or so, 4,900, come up to 21 and a half degrees at peak horsepower. And then we were 21 and a half degrees, yeah, pretty much 21 and a half degrees, 22 degrees all the way up to the top. So again, this is gonna be the nature of the way this camshaft is with the exhaust and the intake tube that's on this thing. We ended up at 73.9% injector duty cycle. I can clean up air fuel just a touch more. As you guys can see, this is commanded versus actual. So, I mean, I'm pretty much within 1 or 2%. So I can get it a little bit tighter than that. I did expect it to fall over like that, and it does. Again, this is just the nature of the induction system on this car. So the VE table is starting to lay over up top. So if you guys want to see my VE table, this is where I'm at currently. So you can see the shape of the torque curve, and you can see where this thing lays over pretty good up top. And again, that's just gonna be the nature of the induction system on this thing. I'm not sure what this camshaft spec is, but I'm gonna assume this car with like a 4.5 or 5 inch intake on it and bigger headers and bigger exhaust, this thing would probably be making good power up to like 71, 7200. But again, this car, I'm pretty sure this car is going to be more of a cruiser. I have a feeling that if the customer isn't happy with this power level, that we will probably turn on the direct port. I might try to look at the jets to see what jets were in the direct port, and the jets are actually seized. So in order to get the direct port working, obviously we'd want to pull the jets, verify, clean out everything, make sure all that stuff is good. Also in my TikTok video, I don't think I said it in yesterday's video, but in my TikTok video, I could have swore one of the expansion tanks under the hood was a standalone for the fuel cell for the nitrous, and it's actually not. So this car has always been sprayed off of whatever fuel's in the tank. I would highly recommend this car having a standalone fuel system up under the hood and run like some good, you know, Renegade 120 or C16 or something similar on just the nitrous side. That way, basically how that would work is the fuel in the nitrous system would be the high octane stuff. So that way, you know, the car could run on pump gas, and then when the nitrous was being sprayed, it had the good nitrous fuel coming in with it. So that's kind of where we're at. So I'm gonna clean this up a little bit more, but I'm gonna go ahead on, and I think we're gonna stop the actual watt pulls. All right, so that's gonna wrap this video up. All the other stuff I'm gonna do on this car, I'll do it on the street. I'll do a little bit on the dyno tomorrow once the car cools back down to make sure the trans is cool. But I'll do a little bit on here, and then I'll do it on the street. I'm not gonna bring you guys along for that. It's just basically me cleaning up the speed density table, going through some of the idle stuff. Again, all this stuff I pretty much showed you before. So I want to thanks again for all the likes, the comments, the subscriptions. I also want to thank my new members. And I may get this video edited before I do my members video. So if you're watching and you're a member, just know I've got one coming for you, and we'll go ahead on and have our discussions, and we'll start putting together a plan for the videos I'm going to make in the members only stuff. So anyways, guys, I'm going to see you guys tomorrow.